All right, welcome back to Salt City Counseling, my friends. My name's Scott Carter, and I am a licensed therapist. It is a absolutely beautiful Sunday. We got some hammock time in the near future. Hammock plus book on a beautiful day. It's pure, simple joy, my friends. I also just got back from having brunch today with a good friend. Nothing like having close friends that you can just be honest with. Will give you honest feedback about life and have really good in-depth discussions, honest discussions. So grateful for good friends. Anyway, so this video is the first video that I'm going to do in a series. I'm not exactly sure how many there's going to be in the series because I find that this is a very, very loaded topic. I'm going to talk about depression. Now, you may be thinking, this is kind of a mundane, average topic that we've all heard a lot about. We all talk about. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that depression is extremely misunderstood. Depression is treated poorly. I'm going to say that the medical industry, even the mental health industry, the healthcare industry in general, does an exceptionally poor job of treating depression. I mentioned in my last video that I think it's really important to have like an accurate view of mental health and mental illness. And I believe that we have a very incorrect view of depression. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I think we need to reinvent. I think we need to have some more honest discussions about depression and what it is. So many people are affected by this. So pervasive. I mean, massive, massive amounts of depression is the new pandemic in the Western cultures. Why are so many people struggling with depression? I'm going to get into that today. And then there's going to be more in the series. So stay tuned. I hope you'll subscribe and share and all that good stuff. And this is going to be number one in the series. Anyways, let's just get to it. I've got some notes here. In the past, I would do videos and it'd be like, oh, click on this link and do that and smash that like button and whatever. I just want this to benefit people. I really feel like it's time to have some more open and honest conversations about depression. I think we need to start thinking way, way, way outside the box. I actually wrote something on this earlier this year on Quora about thinking way outside the box when it comes to depression. I'm going to cover a lot of that. But that particular post did really, really well. I've had tremendously positive feedback. People really, really, really thought that I hit the nail on the head when it comes to depression. So it's time to have a different type of discussion entirely about it. Okay, so first of all, what is depression? I ask a lot of people this. I ask this question to a lot of young people. What's depression? Almost universally and across the board, the answer is the same. Okay, across the board, they will tell me it's sadness. Depression is sadness. Okay, and I want to first put a harpoon in the middle of this myth and see if we can kill it. This depression and sadness are entirely different. Entirely different. There are certain emotions that I find that are actually healthy, even if they are uncomfortable. And sadness is one of them. Anger is one of them. They exist for really good reasons. Sadness and anger are the two at the top of that list. Sadness is healthy. Sadness is natural. Sadness is normal. In fact, I'm a big proponent of the idea that if you feel sad, it's because you have empathy and love, and that's not entirely a bad thing. If you didn't have empathy or love, you probably wouldn't experience a lot of sadness, now would you? Right? So depression is definitely not sadness. Again, I hear this all the time. I hear it from teenagers. I hear it from young people. I wish we would stop describing depression as the same as sadness. It's inaccurate. It's completely inaccurate. Myth. The other thing that we hear, I believe it's a myth. By the way, I'm speaking here from like I treat depression day in and day out as a professional. I have for years, and I've taken a different approach to treating depression and seen people get results, seen people improve, seen people get better. So I'm basing it a lot on that, a lot of it on this experience. Okay, so the next thing I hear a lot about depression or whatever depression is that it is a chemical imbalance, that there's some sort of serotonin deficiency in the brain, and frankly, I've never seen any literature to support this. It's just universally accepted. It's universally bought into. I don't trust pharmaceutical companies. I don't. They have a long history of like greed, exploitation, dishonesty. They're profit driven. And I really think that this particular belief in the mental health industry is driven by pharmaceutical companies, that people have this defect or this flaw about them, that the brain is unable to produce serotonin and it's their fault. They're the flaw, they're the defect, and they have to take these pills to correct that flaw or that defect. Okay, and I recently had even read some literature that was even disputing this idea that it's even a serotonin issue necessarily. That it's just a lot more complex than that. That the brain, life, human beings, neurotransmitters are far more complex than just breaking it down into just saying that, well, your flawed, defective brain doesn't create enough serotonin. And so there may be some truth to that. But what causes a brain to create serotonin? We'll get into that down the road. I want to cover I want to cover some of the basics right now. Okay. The next thing here, and I sort of mentioned this in my last video. There's not even a consensus, an agreed consensus in the mental health industry or the healthcare industry of whether or not depression is an illness or a symptom. And in fact, it's generally regarded as an illness. When I've treated it like an illness, I've gotten nowhere with people. When I've treated it like a symptom, I've seen people get better. I've seen people improve. I don't believe that depression is an illness. I believe that it's a symptom. In other words, it's a mental response. It's a mental state that is in a response to certain things. Okay. In other words, the depression is, well, if you ask me, depression really a lot of the time is a symptom. But what are we talking about here? Because I feel like depression comes in a couple of different forms. Okay. Number one, that I see the most, that I believe describes depression the best, and I believe that if we approach depression this way, it's going to help a lot. It's going to help a lot of people. And that is that people are stuck. Depression is a state in which you are stuck. I mean, think about it. Even the word depression would mean that you're like a rut, right? And if you fall into this rut and you can't get out of it, wouldn't the word depression be accurate to that concept? And so depression to me, number one, is that you're stuck. I mean, you may be, or the perception of being stuck, the lack of choices. The truth of the matter is, human beings are happy when they have freedom, when they have individual sovereignty, when they have the ability to make their own choices and move about freely and act on their own free will. And if you lack choices, you're going to be stuck and you're going to be depressed, right? People in prison are depressed. They're stuck. They're really stuck, right? You may be stuck in a job. You may be stuck in a relationship or a marriage. You might be stuck maybe you live somewhere that is not a good place, not a happy place, and you're just kind of stuck there. You're unable to get out of there, unable to leave there. Maybe you're stuck, feeling stuck in regards to health problems, and certain health issues, right? Inability to create change can create a lot of depression. You can feel a lot of depression as a result of the perception of being stuck or out of options, right? The other part of depression that I find is a negative self-evaluation, right? You just see yourself as less than, deficient, defective, self-hatred, self-loathing, and that type of stuff. If you have lots of self-hatred, self-deprecating thoughts, yeah, you're going to feel depressed. So I believe that's another side of depression. But think about it, right? If you feel depressed because you have negative thoughts, isn't the depression a symptom of those negative thoughts? If you're stuck and you feel depressed, isn't the depression a symptom of feeling stuck? As someone who, and I'm speaking from personal experience here as a human being and as a clinician, I've experienced depression. Personally, yeah, I was really depressed when I was younger. And it partially, I believe that I was stuck. Like, for example, we're raised in this culture where we are basically given a checklist, right? Check the boxes, fulfill the requirements. Go to college, buy a house, have a wife, have some kids, get a job, work a 9 to 5, get health insurance, get a 401k, blah, blah, blah. Check the boxes. Don't ask questions, just check the boxes. Lack of choices, lack of personal sovereignty, lack of freedom. And the more I found that I try and be what other people have wanted me to be, the more miserable and depressed I was. The more authentic I've become, unapologetically authentic that I've become and lived, And even doing work, even practicing therapy in the way that I believe that it should be done, has brought me a tremendous amount of happiness, tremendous amount of joy, tremendous amount of gratitude for the work that I do rather than feeling burned out by it. And truth be told, one of the things that I love about my work is I have such good relationships with my clients, and so many of them improve. And part of this is because I treat something like depression, anxiety is similar. Depression and anxiety usually go together, by the way. Part of this is because I treat depression not only more like a symptom, but I also, as I mentioned in my last video, treat it as though it is more like a state of mental fitness versus a mental illness. Like an illness implies that you're just sick and there's not a whole lot. There's nothing you can do about it. There's not a whole lot of choices, right? Just take your meds, whatever, get lots of sleep, and it'll go away on its own. And that is not even remotely consistent with depression. It just doesn't go away on its own, right? As I mentioned in my last video, depression doesn't go away unless you actually work at it. Depression goes away when you do put work into it, right? If you just feel like you can take some pills and wait long enough, it'll go away on its own. It won't. Okay, it just doesn't. It will always catch up to you. But this is something that's been known in clinical psychology for since Freud and since Freud and Carl Jung. And so, but the mental health industry and the healthcare industry has fallen into this rut of looking at it as though you have this illness, as though you have like a, like a disease, and they're the cure. You have this flaw, they're the cure, and it'll eventually go away on its own because that's the model, that's the disease model of things, and it doesn't fit depression. It doesn't work that way. And so going forward, once you understand the initial concept of depression and understand like what's really going on here, so in my next video, I'm going to talk about how I believe that depression is a response to certain factors in life. Okay, and I'm gonna get into detail about what a lot of those factors are, why so many people are depressed, and why that is a symptom of our lifestyles. Okay, I think that's a good first start. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.